what a amazing weekend it has been. We had Kevin on last night, absolutely on fire, talking about the Pope. I've just learned that Professor Hamamoto has been reading Kevin's works and watching his interviews over the years. And Professor has his own theories and formulations about the Pope that we're going to be getting to. We'll also be talking about some of the huge stories in the news, the Harvey Weinstein trial, Diddy trial, and we will get the professor's thoughts on the death of Virginia as well. So much to talk about. We've got an hour before Chris Todd comes in on the McCann case and Christian Bruckner. Already 100 waiting. This is phenomenal. So if you do have any questions for the professor, put them in the chat. And don't forget to go to the professor's links in the description box and subscribe to his channel. Now, everybody, every live stream we've done since we started covering Virginia, people are getting zapped off it. I've got it on my phone. I'm watching. I'm getting zapped off my phone. I got zapped off 6 times the other day. If you get zapped off this live stream, folks, either refresh your screen or just go to anything that's got my channel icon on it on YouTube. Click the channel icon, and it will bring you back. It's absolute claptrap that they're messing around with us like this, but it's just something that we got to put up with. So thank you for coming back, my friend. Always a great pleasure to see you.
Mr. Attwood, it is my distinct pleasure to be with you here today and your above average audience, international audience.
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions they were asking Kevin were over my head. And some of these people are steeped in biblical and Vatican research. And you said that you've been doing your own research and formulating ideas. What have you come up with?
Yeah. Well, I've been following Kevin Annette's work for years, especially that which involves specifically the indigenous children of Canada, or the nation that he calls Kanata. And as it turns out, it involves a certain family that will go unnamed who have paid visits to one of their Commonwealth countries in order to abscond with the children resources there. And in connection with that, because it relates, I've been dealing with the priest abuse scandals of the Catholic Church in the U.S., including those that Cardinal or Bishop Vigano investigated himself. He came to the U.S. He was sent here specifically.
Can I drop a name in using your vernacular?
Yes.
Kolberg Saxa.
Kolberg Saxa-Gotha. Yes, we'll use that code word. But your audience, Saxa. It's the Teutonic. The Teutonic Knights are very strong. But your audience knows who we're referring to, and most of your audience knows that Father Vigano has been excommunicated, and he's on the outside now. But you know what? He's writing about his excommunication process. So I'm looking at it as all of a piece. Some people might be wondering, okay, what does it have to do with America? I'm not Roman Catholic. I'm not even a believer. I'm in the New Age. I'm into Space Brothers or something like that. But the problem is that what this contingent is ignoring is that the Roman Catholic Church has played an integral role in shaping world history for the past several centuries, including in the Asian world, which is what Leo Zagami, my friend and colleague, will be talking about tomorrow on my show when he discusses his brand new book about the Society of Jesus, especially as it pertains to Japan and China. Right, we're talking about the 16th century. So, ladies and gentlemen, on a large, longitudinal, historical, civilizational stage, the Church of Rome has played an integral role, and it would be foolish of us to ignore it. So that's my operating assumption here.
Well, one of the things that Kevin said last night that flabbergasted me, when we looked at the percent of the religions in China, is that the Catholic and Protestants now are a third of the Buddhists and growing. And even though it's only what it was, 6-7%, it's still on such a huge population. It is absolutely massive. I just got kicked off the stream on my phone, so I imagine many other people have. So
Okay.
if you follow the instructions on the screen, you'll see my little icon. It says I'm live there. I just got kicked over to the T-Bone podcast. So you click back on the live, and it takes you back to the good professor and myself. That's how you get back, folks. But yeah, thanks for messing with the professor's stream, YouTube. We appreciate that. But yeah, what I was saying about the percentage, the growth of the Catholics in China was what I was talking about. I was surprised, and Kevin pointed out right now that it's this collaboration between the church and the Chinese. They're both trying to co-opt each other. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, the Chinese, if I can speak of them as a unified people, which they are not, they've had a really good success in assimilating outside hostile forces, right? They typically, the outside forces become sinicized or sinicized, Chineseified rather than the other way around. And that includes the Jews of the far western parts of China, the Muslims, known as Uyghurs generically, different Christian denominations. So they've had a very good track record of that. That being said, the churches of the West, Protestant denominations and the Roman Catholic Church, have never ceased in their efforts of proselytization, because it's a huge part of the world population with enormous resources that they would like to capture on the behalf of the earthly powers that they serve at bottom, right? We know that they have earthly powers that are very, very strong and deeply rooted. Now, that being said, the Protestant denominations, I would argue, were instrumental in precipitating the Boxer Rebellion, and leading up and even including the Chinese Revolution of the mid late 40s and post-war period, right? So the central government, the Communist Party of China, is really wary because they are students of history, millennially long history. They are very wary about any type of outside religious influences. And as Kevin Annett mentioned, and I read this in his other work, the government of China, central government, has control over who gets the top seats within their version of the Catholic Church over there. They get to pick their cardinals. So you have a fusion of church and state, which has always been very, very dangerous. That's one of the reasons why the United States of America, the Republic, one of the founding pillars was the separation of church and state, because historically, these brilliant men who crafted these rules understood let's put it lightly, the hijinks that these churches engage in when they merge with secular power.
What about the protection of these priests that violate children by the church and the scandals, including the present Pope? It just seems to me that they've got this attitude whereby these kids don't care. We're going to protect the violators at all costs, bring these high-priced fancy lawyers in, paid for by people's donations, some of it, no doubt. And that's never going to end. I mean, even the Leo that we've got now has been known to enable this behavior and protect these violators. I mean, don't you think that the church should completely clean house?
Well, again, I'll return to your guest of the previous three shows, Kevin Annett, and I listened very carefully to the sort of the side comments he's making, which aren't really, they're actually central to his larger framework. But on his behalf, I hope I'm not misstating it, I will say that he makes a very important observation about how the Roman Catholic Church doesn't consider what that activity, which I'll just leave vague, they don't consider it a crime, they consider it a sin. So what is a sin is in their book is not a crime. So it's not punishable, and sins can be forgiven. You can gain absolution for it. And as we know historically, you can even buy your way out of sin. Perhaps that's going to be the fate of one Shaun John Combs, who, by the way, is also being represented indirectly by the Jesuits in the form of Tina Garagos and her father, Mark Garagos, who I hope we can talk about in a moment. They
Okay,
were
we'll get to
both
that. But
trained at Loyola Law School, by the way.
we'll get to that. But just
Loyola
one
Law
more,
School. Yeah, go ahead.
just one more point. Then,
Yes.
you know, the priests are absolving themselves. They're washing away the sin.
Yes.
But the kid they've done that to, they can't wash that away. They're traumatized for life. And that's something that the church, if it continues to enable that behavior and have this attitude that you've just described, isn't it surely going to be their downfall?
I can't predict downfall or what. I can predict, however, what the church will do in order to mitigate public outrage on the behalf of these victimized children and adults, young adults typically, but not tiny, tiny children. They're going to bring in, because, you know, the Roman Catholic Church are very, very steeped into hard sciences, from celestial observation to bioscience. Right. They are, meaning the Roman Catholic Church, are going to bring in this new literature on neuroscience. And they're going to say, well, out of our beneficent and our way of doing penance on behalf of these children, we're going to enroll them into these mass neuroscience-based treatment programs to eliminate any signs of trauma. And there's literature, growing literature coming out of the academy, which is my world, which is heavily funded, that is being positioned. Now we're looking ahead of time here. That's why what I'm telling you here is probably not going to make a lot of sense at this point, but it will. But the church is positioning itself to come out as a savior of the children through so-called neuroscience, which, as you can tell by my quotation, my finger quotation marks, is a bogus pseudoscience. But that's where all the money's going. That's why Obama called this the decade of the brain science. And this is what J.E., the person who disappeared off the face of the earth, and we know who he is. That's why he was so interested in that line of research at the Santa Fe Institute and other institutions, research institutions. Neuroscience. Beware, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, good point, Anna. They disassociate the victims and don't heal them. That is so true.
Right, and you're going to feed them with pharmaceuticals too. Or chips. Maybe it could be Neuralink technologies.
Which the Vatican has huge investments in. So it just makes money from every angle.
Make it going up, make the money going up, make the money going down. It's the SOJ modus operandus. If they like to use Latin, so I'll drop some Latin phrases in there myself.
Looks like Professor Hamamoto's hovering around 55,000 subscribers, folks. And I'm going to put his link to his channel in the live chat. Let's see what he's talking about. True crime as pop literary exploration of state criminality, dark tourism industry, fear of a fourth right, anxiety and envy. So if you want to watch all that good stuff, here's the link in the live chat. Please subscribe. Let's get him up to 100,000 this year. That would be nice. Then he'll get a plaque from YouTube if he's on the good boy list, which I'm not.
Thank you. I'll be glad to accept the award on your behalf.
Yeah, I've never had one. So you were segueing over. You were segueing away from sax over to Diddy. What do you make of the jury selection and shenanigans so far?
Well, remember we were talking about the last time about jury selection? I think the larger media has picked up on how crucial it is to the outcome of this trial. It's all about the jury selection. Now, Mark Garagos has a podcast with another personality, media personality by the name of Harvey Levin. It's called Two Angry Jurors, I believe, based on this Broadway play and movie about 12 Angry Men. All the jury selection people, I'm talking about the defense team, has to do is come up with not two angry men, but two passive-aggressive, middle-aged Black women to completely gum up the works of the prosecution, which, by the way, is partly in cahoots with the defense. Can people wrap their mind around that the justice system does not work in a binary fashion? Defense versus prosecution, good versus evil. At this level, they're playing in the gray zone. We were just talking about the SOJ. They work the gray zone. They work the margins. They work the edges. So guess who's heading the prosecution team? Southern District of New York. It's Maureen Comey. Does that ring a bell? Comey, as in James Comey, former head of the FBI before President Donald Trump fired his butt. He was also once the head of the Southern District of New York for a year himself. So his roots go really deep into SDNY and through his daughter. There he is, the gentle giant, James Comey. His daughter's running the show. So anyway, the point I almost forgot to complete is that what's going on here is a trial, yes, but underlying the trial is what they called in the post-war Cold War period, 1950s, all the great policy intellectuals that were talking about war between the Soviet Union and the United States. They crafted something out of the think tanks called strategies of containment, because they wanted a war. They wanted the Cold War. They wanted the tension between East and West, just like the justice system needs the tension between prosecution and defense in order to completely legitimize and extend a corrupt system. Right. And as you know, very well know, and I think you just made sort of an aside, but I think it's an important point. In America, the American justice system, which you have an intimate experience with, it's the best system that money can buy. Right? And P Diddy's people have tons of money. It's almost, I mean, they're printing the money, so they've got lots of it. But the point is that they want to make sure that it's contained, that that's where the strategy of containment is concerned, in just to the certain narrow band of characters. And that would include Sean Combs, and they'll bring in some peripheral people like Al B. Shaw and the memory of Kim Porter, and they'll bring in Cassandra, right? All these people here. But it's part of this, the theatrics by which the two wrestlers are on the same team. They're on the same payroll, right? As bad as that, and I'm trying to be real here. I'm not talking about law school, L1, the first year of law school. I'm talking about the people who go to Loyola Law School, trained by the Jesuit, win at any cost mentality, versus the Yale people, the Harvard. Comey comes from Harvard. Garagos Jr., Teeny, comes from Loyola. Her father's also from, she's a second generation Loyola Law School graduate. And those guys in America, they're known as street fighters. They're known as knife fighters. They can shred any white shoe lawyer from Yale, Harvard, Columbia, you name it, because they get down and dirty in the gutter, and they will win at all costs. And the way they're going to win, according to Professor Hamamoto's patented, trademarked, copyrighted cultural forensics methodology, is they have to get two angry Black women on the jury, and they gonna win. they gonna walk. P Diddy gonna walk. And I know this from history because this is why cultural forensic historical panorama is so important, because Garagos goes back to the OJ Simpson trial, which I followed back in 1994. It was decided in October 1995, but Mark Garagos was at the table during all of it. Mark, again, that's how far he goes back, but that's a generation ago. Most of the people have forgotten about this. It's really key because it's part of our cultural, historical, and juridical memory that is part of the subtext of the Shaun Combs trial going on now. So we have to foreground it. We being whoever side you want to pick, right? The prosecution or the defense, both of them are missing out on it. They're looking at strictly from a juridical, legal perspective. But in the age of cell phones, and it was only getting underway when OJ was under trial here, all this information is known to almost everybody out there. They're not going to get a pristine, uninformed jury. They're going to get someone who's been marinating in the whole P Diddy story from the jump. That's Mark Garagos. He's Armenian, by the way. And I mentioned this because ethnicity, that's Orenthal James Simpson, who passed away not long ago. He was an American football hero in college, USC, University of Southern California, Los Angeles. And then he became an NFL, National Football League star and a media personality, and people know the rest. And by the way, I should say that this around the time where the trial was being decided, around October, prior to October, I was just starting over at UC, University of California at Davis. So I was at a mixer of all the new faculty and welcome back for a new academic year. And I was a little bit too vocal about meeting people, and I told a lot of influential administrator type people who are always observing you, and they're watching you like Jesuits, man. They're always scrutinizing you, even at the dinner table, even when you're sipping a cup of coffee, they're keeping a book on you. But I happened to mention, I said, OJ Simpson's gonna skate. And they go, what? Because back then everybody thought it was a slam dunk. OJ Simpson's going down. But I said, no. And I said this at a faculty gathering, casual, I thought. And then I started walking around. I started hearing the buzz and said, hey, that guy Hamamoto, the new guy here, said OJ. They were already stigmatizing me. And guess what happened? OJ Simpson walked. He walked. Because as I told you before, I knew one of the women who was working with the Joellen Demetrius, who was the trial consultant for the OJ Simpson trial. I said, with this type of behavioral science and profiling on their side, Mark Garagos, Johnny Cochran, Robert Kardashian, who's an attorney. He's another Armenian American, by the way. The Armenian connection, we're talking about ethnic connection. This is the big 800-pound gorilla in the room, by the way, race. There's a whole racial subtext here that's not being spoken about, right? But they had all these resources mobilized. That was the genius of Mark Garagos. And you notice that he started showing up at the table with his daughter as an informal advisor. And the judge said, no. Let's see, Garagos is not in this picture. You've got Robert Shapiro on the right, Johnny Cochran, just to the left of OJ Simpson. I don't know who the little guy is in the middle, and some other ones. But Garagos is part of this, I believe. And this might have been right before Johnny Cochran uttered or right after Johnny Cochran, he came up with his own hip-hop, you can't stop rhyme, right? Johnny Cochran is the hip-hop king of the legal profession, and this is something that the defense might want to think about doing. He said, if a glove does not fit, you must acquit. And sure enough, through a process of what we call, write this down, people who are watching, through a process of what is called jury nullification. Jury nullification. Through the process of jury nullification, Orenthal James Simpson walked free. So this is the goal of the defense team, I believe, jury nullification. You don't have to win, you don't have to draw, you don't have to lose. You can nullify. Right? It's not a matter of, stop thinking about binaries, justice, defense, win, lose, good, evil. Jury nullification is the ticket. Yeah, that's the dream team right there.
That's Travolta in the movie.
Was there a movie made out of this?
I think so, because that's Travolta, isn't it?
Where on the
OJ movie, isn't it? Wasn't it the OJ movie?
No, these are the real characters.
Oh, that's not John Travolta.
Oh, you know what? That's F. Lee Bailey on the far left. That's F. Lee Bailey.
What about
who by that time was just a useless sot. He was drunk out of his mind most of the time. But you see, the point is that he had resonance, he had aura, he had vibes, he had riz, as the kids say nowadays. He had the riz, so they put him on the bench so that the juries and the judge, Lance Ito, who I've been in contact with, by the way, I wrote him a letter after where I said, "Brother Lance Ito, you got screwed." And he wrote me back too. It's a letter I always treasure. Yeah, that's the great American attorney, F. Lee Bailey. He's been at the center of any number of celebrity trials. Same with Mark Garagos. In fact, I think right now he's involved with the Lyle and Eric Menendez retrial. And it was the Eric and Lyle Menendez trial where P Diddy's suit, his outfit, was crafted. It's the sincerity sweater that Eric and Lyle Menendez were told to wear by Leslie Abramson. She's another one of those attack dogs you do not want to be in a trial situation with her because she's a knife fighter. But she made him wear the sweaters and the shirt with a collar, right? Make them look as wholesome and collegiate as possible. This is what Diddy's going to be wearing, or has been wearing already.
Yeah, so Travolta was in The People versus OJ. He played Robert Shapiro. Let's get the Menendez.
Wow, okay. Yeah. There's I don't know who's who, but they're the Menendez brothers.
Yeah, so that is Lyle on the left and Eric on the right.
Mm-hmm. Another sensational LA type crime.
And they're about to get released, aren't they?
They're working on it. I don't know if it's going to work, but that brings up the point is that you have to use the clock. It's like the game of American basketball, right? It may say 5 minutes left, but you can run the clock by timeouts, fouling, all kinds of diversion. You can extend the game, another 20 minutes. And in doing so, you can rally your own defense, mount a new offense, get your head together. That's our friend Harvey Weinstein. He's also going to probably be sprung, I'm guessing. And that's in keeping with this idea that I'm articulating now. You got to run clock. The longer you can run the clock, the better chance you have on the behalf of your client, whether it's Harvey Weinstein or Shaun John Combs or Lyle and Eric Menendez. You run clock because there's a continuum between tragedy and comedy, right? Everything, no matter how tragic it is, given the passage of time, you run clock and it eventually becomes comedy. So the longer that this goes on with Shaun John Combs, the more the needle pushes towards parody and then comedy, and it's going to be a laughing stock. And the jury, the judge, everybody involved say, well, this is not as serious as we thought it was initially. The needle has moved through the passage of time into comedy. I mean, I gave a talk recently, on my show. Okay, I mean, what could be more heinous than life in a Nazi concentration camp, right? 1945, people walked and said, man, this is horrific. Less than 2 decades later, there was a television sitcom on CBS television called Hogan's Heroes, a situation which was set in a Nazi concentration camp. And this is primetime television in America, right? So, again, run clock, get the needle to move from tragedy, whatever all the negative stories are about Shaun John Combs, P Diddy, P Love, all of that, right? The dragon of Cassie Ventura, all of that, all the supposed parties, which the defense is going to pick apart. And so, well, how do you know? How do you know this is a freak off? Didn't you go there voluntarily? Blah, blah, blah. But you got to move that needle from tragedy to comedy. So all you got to do is get your people. You got to get Mark Garagos, go out to dinner with Jimmy Kimmel's. He's a talk show, chat show host. Take the writers out. They're all in LA. Take the writers out to a big dinner at the local watering hole. Buy them dinner. Say, hey, can you put a skit together in the monologue and let Jimmy Kimmel make a big joke about the trial, about P. Diddy? You guys are brilliant. You're genius. And then start getting your street team together and creating memes and putting them on TikTok and creating little videos. And then the needle is moving from tragedy to comedy. And by the time the trial is decided, you got one free Shaun John Combs. You like it? Now, that's not what I want to see. I'm just trying to be real here. Okay? I'm just putting my mind in the head